you can be encouraged, especially for those who are already involved in the work, or you could be pushed to be part of an environmental movement or the climate movement. And before we proceed, let me just give you some session reminders, which I believe will be flashed on the screen. All right, so these are our session reminders. Make your lovely faces visible if it's possible, so that we can see each other as if we're in the same room. And this is a safe space, so let's work together to make this happen. When not speaking, please be on mute to avoid audio issues. And by joining this event, you agree to participate in a recorded session that will be posted in the Asia Solidarity Lab event page. And finally, use the chat box to share your questions and comments so we can queue it accordingly. Without further ado, let's welcome our special guest for today. So we have guest speakers from all over. Amika from Thailand, Charan from Thailand, Haley from Malaysia, Joshua from the Philippines, and Kina from Indonesia. So I'll be asking them to introduce themselves, to talk about their background or the organization that they're representing. And I also want to ask them a very important question. Are you a dog, cat, or plant person? And how has this helped you during the pandemic? So let's start with Amika. Sawadee ka.
Hello. Sawadika. Hello, everyone. So I'm Amika Jamjansi, or you can call me Mika. I'm from Thailand, and I'm the representative from as a volunteer and activist from Greenpeace Thailand, and also I'm also the president of Nature Lovers Club in my university, Mahidol University in Thailand, and project assistant of many projects in Thailand, such as Lat Phrao Canal Project and also Gotsak Project. And the question of, okay, actually, I'm kind of like dog and cat person, both, because I have both dog and cat plant sometime, and it helps me a lot during the pandemic because it's boring. So during my free time, when I feel like bored and lonely, I'll just play with my cat, play with my dog, and sometimes plant. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Amika. Now let's hear it from Charan, also from Thailand. Sawadee ka.
Sawadee ka. Hello, everyone. I am Jalen Surupit, or you can call me in short, Boom. So basically, I have joined with Greenpeace Thailand for many years. I have been participating in many projects, such as solar energy project that they are promoting right now, and also climate strike, which organized by an environmentalist in Bangkok. So that's basically I have participated. And the question that you have been raised, so I would say that I'm a plant and a cat person. That actually, especially plant right now, because I have been like growing plants, a lot of plants right now. It helped me a lot during the pandemic, as it's kind of like something you put to look up to in every day to see its progress and how it grows and how you could take care of it. Yeah.
ขอบคุณครับ Charan.
ขอบคุณค
So
รับ
yes, so he's also a plant person. Because of the lockdown, apparently a lot of people got really involved into planting, which is good. So now let's hear it from Haley.
Hi everyone, I'm Haley and I'm representing Climate Action Malaysia, kami. So I'll start with like how I got into this. So basically, or like my role right now. So I'm actually a researcher under the content creation team in kami. So what I do is research and help the design team in creating infographics that we post onto social media in hopes of helping Malaysians understand the climate crisis, as well as the struggles that Indigenous people face in our country. As of now, I'm also one of the coordinators for the Weaving Hopes for the Future project under kami as well, which is a UK-Malaysia collaboration to bring Malaysian Indigenous voices to the COP26 in Glasgow this year. So hopefully, I'll send a link later so you guys can check it out. And we really do need your support because it's so important for us to bring these Indigenous voices to COP26 this year. As for whether I'm a dog, cat, or plant person, I'm not sure how to answer this because I do love like all three. But as of now, I have 2 dogs at home as well as many plants. And I think it's essential for us to have something to care for and look forward to every day, especially since this pandemic has been affecting us for like over 2 years now. And it has really helped me in easing a lot of stress from working at home as well as studying at home. And I would say that like taking care of plants is really important because it helps people understand the importance of plants, which leads to understanding the forest and its importance to the climate. And I would say that I have influenced my family into taking care of plants. So now like my entire house is filled with plants. Yeah, thank you.
That's great, Haley. Thank you. Now let's hear it from Joshua. Magandang umaga, Joshua.
Magandang umaga, good morning everyone. I'm Joshua, 19 years old from the Philippines. I'm one of the conveners of an environmental coalition called Youth for Climate Hope. Youth for Climate Hope is a coalition of individuals and organizations in Negros Occidental, a province in the Philippines, that is concerned about the pressing climate crisis. We have successfully urged our governor to declare our province a coal-free province and declared it as a source of renewable energy. So that was one of our major victory pre-pandemic. That was done because of series of protests from young people and strikes. And at the last protest, where 2,000 young people showed up in front of the provincial capital, the governor was forced to declare Negros Occidental a coal-free province. So that was one of our victories, and one of the reasons why I am involved in the climate campaign. If I'm a cat, dog, or plant person, I'm a plant person, and there's usually a plant over here, but it can survive, so I need to bring it outside now to so that it can have sunlight and oxygen, etc. So yeah, I'm a plant person, and I'm very happy to join you guys today here, and I'm seeing very young and passionate faces here at the Zoom call. So I'm excited about how our conversation will go.
Salamat, Joshua. I'm also a plant person, and I have my plant over here. Hello. All right, last but not the least, let's hear it from Kina from Indonesia. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi. Good morning from Jakarta. So it's very nice to be here. I am Margareta Quina, and I am an environmental attorney, which means I kind of like work with everyone. So not really kind of like tailored with one particular organization. In Indonesia, I've been working with some of the local grassroots organizations, representing them in the court, working with people from the Legal Aid Foundation as well. And most of the time, my job is kind of like looks really boring, like looking into thick documents and make sure that the polluters cannot pollute as they like. So I am a wildlife person. I'm not really kind of like a cat or dog or plants person. I love birds, you can see that, and I love fish. So yeah, fish and birds person. And during the pandemic, they are my consolation, despite I cannot really use my field guide, but I can just pretending that I'm in a jungle or something. Really excited to hear more from y'all.
Terima kasih. Thank you. And yes, it's good to hear that, yeah, a lot of you are dog person or a cat person or a plant person. And I can also see a lot of people on the chat box that saying that they're mostly a dog person, but the important thing is we are all nature people. We enjoy nature. We're interested about taking care of the environment. That's why we are here. So once again, thank you for taking time to be part of this learning session for today. So a question for everyone. I wonder what motivated you to be involved in the environmental or climate movement. What is your why? So maybe we can start from Amika.
Okay, actually, my journey started 3 to 4 years ago. Started from like actually before this, I don't know, and to be honest, I didn't really care about environment until 3 to 4 years ago that I participated in a volunteering activities. So I was like, actually, when I decided to participate in that activity, I was just, want to dive or snorkel for free because it's a project that, if after that volunteer, we will go to snorkel and stuff. But then when I go there, we have to, it's called Project Sak, and it's a island in Pattaya, Thailand, and it's a small island with some kind of, actually a lot of trash there, even though it's small island. So we collected all trash. I mean, not all, but some of the areas in that island, and separated it in categories, and then counted them and counted and recorded them. So basically, at the time, I feel like, oh my god, I collected like more than 10 bags, and it's like very big bags, and we counted, like we got a lot of numbers because we separated them as well. And I learned from my professor that even like for example, the bottle that have no lids but end up in the island, it actually from not very far away from the island, because if there's a lid, it will sink, right? And then I feel like, oh my god, in this island it's very small and no one lives there. How it's possible to have this much trash, and especially plastic trash? And what if it's end up in the bottom of the oceans, and how much is going to be in the bottom of the ocean and in the environment and even other places, even this place very small. So that's my feeling at the time, and that's why I try to help with the environmental activities after that. Yes.
Great. Yeah, usually we see a problem, and yeah, the plastic pollution is one big issue that we have to tackle. And yes, when we see a problem, we try to be involved to try to address that problem. Thank you, Amika. How about Chaden?
Okay, so actually my journey started around 4 years ago when I first got into internship with Greenpeace Thailand. Back then, my background is kind of like Amika, that I did not know much about environmental issues or what is the story behind all the issue around that. But when I started doing internship with Greenpeace, I was exposed to many, oh my God, there are a lot of things that we need to do, and a lot of things, and Greenpeace also give me a lot of opportunity to join with their volunteers activities and alternate activities. So every time I do it, I feel like I just started to feel really good that I could do something for everyone. It's like I'm being a hero for everyone else that they are at home or something like that. So these kind of motivation and feeling just involved in me, and feel like I need to stand up for something. Yeah, and since then I starting to like be more participated in environmental activities and issues around like Bangkok and everywhere. Yeah, that's kind of my story.
That's great, Chad, standing up for something and standing up for the environment. And I hope we can all stand up for the environment.
Definitely.
Thank you. Haley, how about you? What is your why?
For me, I think when I was like, since I was really young, I was really, really interested in biology. So for me, I really love wildlife, and of course, thinking about their habitat is such an important thing. So when I was in high school, I did a lot of volunteer. So like it wasn't like really consistent, but I did volunteer with Greenpeace Malaysia. I did it with Malaysia Nature Society, and slowly I started to meet new people and started engaging with the community that actually fights for animal rights as well as our environment. And I started off my journey advocating by posting on social media. So when I was in high school, I would post on my stories, I would write really long captions to go with my pictures and encourage my friends to like read and also like perhaps share their opinions on like specific issues. And then in 2019, I joined Malaysia's largest climate strike, which was organized by kami. And I was so inspired meeting so many new people there and seeing their drive. Like it was like such a surreal moment, because in that moment while we were marching and also like, you know, chanting, I felt like really emotional, which was really weird. Like I felt like I was gonna cry because I've never met that amount of people that cared for the environment. For like many years, it felt like I was the only one, or I only knew like 2 other people that actually care. So that moment was really like something that pushed me and told me that like I needed to do more. And that's when I spoke to people in Kami and told them that I was interested in joining their fight as well. And I wanted to provide my help and services in any way possible. And that's how I started being a researcher for the content creation team. So yeah, I think essentially for me, like what really pushed me was building up to it, like joining small community related initiatives such as like, you know, picking up rubbish, you know, going for walks, and then meeting more and more people, getting recommended to join other activities as well. And then and in the end, like I met the co-founders for Kami, and that's how I requested to, you know, help them. And yeah, so I think that's what really pushed me, by meeting a lot of people that have the same, you know, goal in mind and wanting to help the environment. Yeah.
Thank you, Haley. That's really nice. I like what you said about, you know, thinking about the habitat and thinking about the environment. So it's all about this connection, which I feel like we have lost. That's why we always try to find ways to be reconnected to the earth. And like what you said earlier, planting is a way of reconnecting to the soil and reconnecting to the earth, reconnecting to nature. And I can see some people also sharing their whys on the chat box. So keep on sharing your whys as well. It's really inspiring to hear from like-minded people, from the youth who are inspired to do something for the environment. Now let's hear it from Joshua.
Thank you, and it's very inspiring to hear your why. For me, my why, the center of my work is always about people, because I've always looked at environmental issues in the lens of social justice and human rights. And I also started my environmental engagement in the issues of plastic pollution, plastic regulation. When we go to coastal communities in Negros Occidental, the coastal communities there who rely their livelihood from the ocean, the shoreline is always full of plastic. There's this one coastal community in Bacolod that you can literally walk on water, because the rubbish is very thick that you can walk on it, even though it's already water below that. So it's I think it really hurts me, you know, to see that when people who have the least contribution to that pollution suffers the most of it. So I really see it as an injustice, and I even consider it as violence to people living in that communities who are not even the source of that garbage, but are directly experiencing the impacts of it. So same with the issue of climate change and climate justice. it's also very present in other environmental issues. So I've always considered people in the center of our work, especially here in Negros Occidental, um, especially vulnerable communities of urban poor communities. And of course, now I'm affiliated with a land and human rights organization, and we're seeing the impacts of climate change to the agricultural sector. How will it lower the farm production, and will of course continue to push our farmers to poverty. So that's an issue, or that's the reason why I always get up and continue to fight for what we are fighting for every day.
Oh, thank you, Joshua. I like what you said about putting people at the center of the things that we do, and it's all about, it's all about social justice and trying to do these things not for corporate interests, but for the interests of human beings. It's for our well-being. Yeah. And you mentioned something about regulations, and Queena would know a lot of things about that. So Queena, why don't you share your why to us?
Definitely, I'm here not because of the regulation. It's not attractive at all. So I I I totally feel like I come from a different time. Maybe you should call me auntie. So my teenager years was a time where a lot of people still have the privilege of going to nature without really having to worry about extreme weather. So that was back in 2008 until 2012, where I went to the mountains and villages. I go traveling every other week without any concern about my carbon emission yet. And that was also the time when we don't really have that much exposure from video or YouTube or TikTok. There were instant messenger, but not as much as visuals as you see today. So my why was really look at my backdrop. It's kind of like one of the mountains that I went over and over again. And one of the things that I realized is I really like it. And from my personal perspective, I really bring as many people as possible, including my future child, grandchild. I want to kind of like make everyone 100 years from now still able to see this beauty. And it's really kind of like what drive me into environmental law, because there wasn't much choice at that time. It's either you go for the big corporates or big law firms and doing oil and gas and that kind of things, or you do something different. And I think it's worth trying. It wasn't big at that time, but I think it was a way to bridge my personal interest with what I can do for the society.
That's great, Queena. And I have a follow-up question to you, since you already opened up this discussion about regulations. And there's always been a question of, we have these good regulations, right? They're existing, they're there, but the problem is with the implementation, and that's always the issue. So how do we deal with that challenge of properly implementing these environmental laws?
That's a really difficult question to start the conversation. But from what I've seen, that's totally true. There are a lot of law that is, one, maybe it's not designed properly. So from really the upstream, when a regulation is designed in isolation, when it doesn't really take into account the social and political support around it, it might have problems in its implementation. So that's one thing. So it's really important to make sure the visibility and how people can participate in the rulemaking, because it's our rule, it's not polluters' rule. And right now we see a lot of the regulations are actually the polluters' law. And the second one is enforcing it. So enforcing thing, fortunately, right now, in many countries, there are also opportunities for citizens to take the enforcement of things in their own hands. So government failure to implement a provision that will support our rights and the greater benefit of the environment and future generation is, at least it can be questioned to the court. And when you're bringing that into the court, I'm speaking from my experience in Indonesia, where a lot of people, including me, doesn't really believe in the judiciary institution. So it's really important to also use that venue to communicate the issue to the people and shed light to the evidence. So it's a fighting space, not only in the legal venue. It's not a fighting space only for the plaintiffs and the lawyers, but really it becomes a place to spotlight the issue and engage wider people on and really heading towards the direction of making the law and regulation our law.
Thank you, Queena, for that. And there was a comment earlier, you still look young, auntie. So that's a funny comment. In the Philippines, we have what we call as plantito and plantita, plant uncle and plant auntie. So so we can be plantitos and plantitas, but still young looking. So that's really great. So Queena mentioned something about engaging people, and Haley, I remember you talking about working with indigenous peoples, and most of the time it's the indigenous people who are not really involved with with policy and decisions. So could you tell us a bit more about the work that you do with the indigenous people and how you try to involve them more?
Firstly, I think I kind of disagree. I don't think that they're not really involved. It's just that they don't have the right avenues to actually get involved, which, as we know, indigenous people all over the world, the system oppresses them as much as, the government wants to say that we support, indigenous people, the native people of the land. Most of the times in every single country, they're the most oppressed and the system doesn't benefit them in any way. So firstly, we can talk about land rights. So I think this is common in Indonesia as well. So a lot of indigenous lands are confiscated from indigenous people. And because of their status as indigenous people, a lot of times they're unable to fight for their lands simply because the law doesn't protect them, because the people in power can so easily manipulate the law in order to force them out of their homes, resettle them, and force them to go to schools and brainwash them and change their thinking and stop them from practicing their culture. And essentially, I think it's important for us to start talking to indigenous people and asking them how we can help them in amplifying their voices, which is part of what Weaving Hopes for the Future is doing. We want to bring the voices of indigenous people to COP26 because we want the world to see how the indigenous people are being treated back home. And a lot of times when people talk about indigenous people, they think of, uncivilized people or people who just live in the forest, but essentially they are the solution to climate crisis. They are the solution to help us go through all sorts of natural disasters that's coming for us because of climate change. Because as you know, they've been living in the forest and they've been going through all these extreme weathers for the past, thousands of years. And essentially their indigenous knowledge is what's going to help us in protecting our people as well as our homes. And the most important thing are food. So resources, as you know, resources are depleting because of overconsumption and capitalism. And, a lot of people wonder, how do these indigenous people survive in the forest? And it's because of their ability to take care of the forest as well as to care for themselves without depleting the earth. So I think it's really important for us to engage and, start making conversations and ensuring that indigenous voices are being heard in terms of policy making, because their knowledge and their lands is what's going to protect us from all these disasters that's coming for us. So yeah, essentially, I think that in a way that we can help to communicate with indigenous people, of course, is learning their language and as well as going. And I think it's a bit of a touchy topic because a lot of times Indigenous people don't want contact with us because they see us as people stealing from them, taking from them. So establishing that trust is really difficult. And, one small mistake can destroy that years of trust. And I think that essentially we need to work together to prove to them that we are here for a solution and we're not here to destroy their home because, look at us, we've destroyed our homes and now we're taking theirs because we have nowhere else to go. So yeah, establishing that trust, talking to them, making sure that they feel safe and protected and speaking out because of the nature of their oppression. Speaking out about their land rights and their homes being taken away from them could lead them to serious safety issues and danger. So as much as they're at risk, it's important for us to amplify their voices so that essentially all of us can be protected and we can find a solution that benefits all, because not just solutions are not a one size fit all. We need it to be intersectional so that it could help every single community in the world. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's a perfect response. We really need to amplify the voices of the Indigenous people. And I myself actually belong to an Indigenous group in the Philippines. I'm an Imbaloy, so it's an Indigenous group in the northern part of the Philippines in the Cordilleras. And as someone who grew up in the city, I always try to go back to my roots and try to rediscover my culture. Speaking of Indigenous peoples in the Philippines, there's oppression that's happening with the Indigenous people. And Joshua, as someone who's involved with human rights, how is your work like in the Philippines?
Thank you. I have little to no engagement with Indigenous people's work, especially when it comes to climate change. But of course, news all around the Philippines. Imagine schools of Indigenous peoples are being bombed by military men of the government. So it's not only the impacts of climate change. It's not only corporate greed. It's not only development aggression, but there's another variable. It's the government accusing the Indigenous peoples to be rebels, and then bombing their schools, destroying their homes, forcing them out of their ancestral lands. There was a recent issue of a dam that is supposed to be built that will cover hectares and hectares of forest lands where Indigenous peoples um, live in the Philippines. So that's the major issues that Indigenous peoples face in the Philippines. Um, in fact, if you've heard of the Anti-Terrorism Act of the President Rodrigo Duterte from the Philippines, alarms have been raised about that, even by environmental groups, that the main purpose of it is not to crush terrorism, but to crush dissent and activists. So when that was passed, the first cases were two AITAs. AITA is an indigenous group from the Philippines. They were charged of terrorism. So they were the first victim of that draconian law that defines terrorism vaguely. So we see that and of course in our work in the environment, it's very very dangerous to campaign for environmental protection in the Philippines, especially if there will be a time that you'll campaign against large corporations. We have here with us in the call is our comrades from southern part of the Philippines. One of their leaders, Miss Gloria Capitan, was one of the first victims of extrajudicial killings under the presidency of President Rodrigo Duterte. So she was a leader of communities fighting the coal plants, and then the same corporation is the one that is proposed to build a coal plant here in Negros Occidental. And you know what's absurd about them is that when communities raised that they were experiencing skin diseases because of the emissions from the coal plants, their CEO answered that it's because of lies from the dogs. So imagine how absurd his answer was, and how did he discredit the communities that are complaining about the emissions of his coal-fired power plants, where he is earning millions from it, and the communities living near it are suffering from health concerns. No, and so after so currently in the Philippines, especially me, we have under gun because there's a phenomenon in the Philippines called red tagging. So if you've heard of it, activists, yeah, regardless of your advocacy, may it be environment, land rights, human rights, you are prone to red tagging. Red tagging is a phenomenon where um, government institution or even some people communities would identify you with the rebels, so they will call you red or the communist rebels, and it is very dangerous, especially to be labeled as a rebel here in the Philippines, because the basically the process is, first they would accuse you of being a terrorist, second they will um, execute, they will neutralize you. So many cases of murders of activists here in Bacolod, the close colleague, Zara Alvarez, also a very staunch landed human rights defender, was killed in the middle of the road. She was first red tagged. So that's um, that's one of the big things that we face here in the Philippines. In fact, at first we just laughed about it, but we realized that um, it has somehow put danger in our lives, because we were called watermelons in local newspapers. They labeled us as watermelons. Do you know what watermelon? What do they mean when they said watermelon? Watermelon means green on the outside, meaning environmentalist on the outside, but red on the inside, communist. So they have accused us of being really communist, but just using the environment campaign um, to facade as a facade for our activism and fight for environment protection. So that's how absurd it can be here in the Philippines, and how crazy it can be, and that's how dangerous it can be here. So I'm really happy as well that some people are still um, are not backing down from these oppressive regimes. It is common, we're seeing it from all around the globe. Um, authoritarians, tyrants are leading major countries, but we're happy that the people are continuously pushing back and asserting what they deserve, their rights and their right to have a healthful and just environment.
Thank you, Joshua. You really was able to give a lot of examples of these human rights issues that we're facing in the Philippines. And yeah, I applaud you for taking courage, young as you are, to continue fighting for the people, fighting for the environment. Not getting scared with no matter how much pressure they put on you. And yeah, props to you and to everyone who's continuing with the work that they do, despite the threats on their lives, despite the challenges from many different people. And yeah, there's clearly it can be a political issue and it can be a touchy subject, but we can't really steer away from how political environmental issues can be. And when it comes to political unrest, I know that this is also sort of happening in Thailand. So Charan and Amika, do you want to share anything about what's happening politically in Thailand and how that has affected your campaigns for the environment? Maybe we can start with Charan and then Amika.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as many of you may know that Thailand right now is facing a difficulty in political participation from the people, and we are under authoritarian government for many years, like 7 years. And I have seen that and the government itself put the environmental issue like at the very low importance, that and also like the civil society from the environmental sector are facing regulation that are trying to ban the participation and monitoring from the civil society as well. That is something that we are trying to challenge the government to change it immediately, as it would make civil society and the movement of the environmental issue become more difficult to do so. But somehow I think that the government right now should play a key role in the environmental issue to push forward many good regulation and enforcement. As many of the speakers have shared that the government does not care about the environmental issue and try to ban or banish all the activists to participate in. That's happening in Thailand as well. And I must say that right now the situation is very difficult to participate in any political movement, as well as the environmental one. So I would say that the government should listen more to us and very open and channel for us to participate more, because right now it's very difficult for anyone to raise a voice, and basically people's voice is not heard by the government, I must say.
Yes, thank you, Chad. And Amika, would you like to add anything to that? And maybe also share about your experience of being an activist yourself?
Yes, as you know, politics and environmental issues mostly relevant to each other, because politics, firstly in Thailand, we are governed by the junta, the military, and it's they don't like Duran say, they don't really care about the environment, and recently they just cut the budget on the environmental sector down a lot. And also they in Thailand, I think it's like other countries in Asia as well, that we have a lot of corruption, and the patronage system, they support the capitalists and stuff, for their own benefits. So that's why the policy and regulations, it's not really favor the environmental issues. So mostly it favor business, which is the business that they support, the government support, and that business support the government, they support each other. So the environment, it's being the environmental issues being suppressed into what they're not interested in solving the issues. And there are a lot of issues in Thailand in for the environmental sectors that they don't really solve. I'm actually heard about the one of them is the CCPTTP something that they want to sign the contract, which it's also not really benefits the farmer in Thailand. And also it's kind of they want to do that just to make profit for themselves, for their own gain and stuff. And there's also other activity that they try to do for their own benefits, and that's hard for the activists and also even the NGOs and stuff to change their policies to make them support our activities, because they don't really care. But one thing to do that, it's just to change that, change the government and the system, the whole system. Because okay, when we have the policies that they can have, because we cannot deny that policy and regulation is one key important thing that would help solving the environmental issues a lot. Because most people in Thailand, and I think also in many countries in Asia, that they don't they're not really aware of environmental issues and take actions much. So the policy could help, but then yeah, it's difficult with this system and also corruption and the failure of the what is it called, like the implementation and the effective, you know, what is it called, like to use the laws effectively, and even the court system, it's not that good. In Thailand, it's also a lot of problems to solve if you want to like address the environmental issues effectively. Yes.
Yeah, we really need as you said, we really need system issue. And all of you raised so many issues, about environmental problems. It's such a wicked problem, environmental issues. And you have the complication of corporate interests, politics, and everything. And now we also have the pandemic. So another question for everyone before we proceed to the Q&A is, how has pandemic affected your work, and how do you navigate through all these many different issues? You also have your personal life, and there's the pandemic, there's your advocacy for the environment. So how do you balance all of these things? Let's start from Quina.
Sure, a lot has happened in Indonesia and in the whole Asia and the whole world, I think, during the pandemic. One of the things that we saw is there are a lot of nasty things that government and businesses, big fossil fuels do by taking advantage of the pandemic situation and all of the regulatory ease that comes as a result of pandemic. So it's totally feels surreal because we've seen our partners, while they are still struggling with what kind of pivot they want to do with community organizing, how they are transitioning from physical to online, they also have to deal with a lot of political maneuvers that really benefits the oligarch. But there's also a silver lining from that, because we've seen a lot of them are really able to pivot to online campaign. And sometimes things gets really creative in there, not only online, but also kind of like all the forms of like murals. There are people painting murals as a form of their entertainment. And sometimes it's turning a really difficult political comments or protest into something that is really funny. And I know this is really satirical and sad, but there are many times I wake up feeling so surreal and absurd looking at our condition as a nation, but I cannot help but laughing at the meme that circulating around an issue, because sometimes it gets really funny and it translates really difficult issues into something that everyone can engage. So that's really one of my gratefulness for how our partners organization have pivoted during the pandemic. But the other thing is really about the self-care. I've also noticed a lot of people, especially from the activists, there's a difficulty in taking a boundary between your personal life and your professional pursuit. It's really a gray line. So one of the things that really worked well for me is making my making sure that my life is, I have a lot of other interests, and the pandemic is actually a really good time to enhance your skills, including kind of like the skills that we urban people never really have the opportunity to learn, like skills that many indigenous people have that never really passed to our generations. And a lot of online videos and tutorials, artistic pursuit like painting, or just pretending you are somewhere in the forest. There are a lot of activity, creative activity that can really help me personally to really make sure that the next Monday when I come back to my job, I'm coming back really excited and being more efficient and productive and creative. So yeah, that's what works for me, especially totally it doesn't work for everyone.
Yes, Rina, thank you for putting emphasis on self-care as well. Sometimes we should not forget about taking care of ourselves, because the work can be tiring and can be frustrating. So yeah, thank you for raising that up. Haley.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on the complication of the pandemic and how you deal with the many different issues when it comes to your work?
I think in Malaysia, especially with the pandemic, it's really difficult for us to advocate for the environment because there's a lot of other more pressing issues that need the focus. For example, like first of all, getting rid of the pandemic. Of course, helping people, ensuring that everyone is protected, they have access to, hospitalization and medical care. So a lot of times when we advocate for environment, it gets like drowned out. Like people don't really pay attention to it because, a lot of people would say like, in this situation, you're really going to talk about the forest. But I think what people don't understand is the link between what we're facing and what's happening to our environment. Essentially, like one of the reasons why COVID is spreading so fast is because of the increasing global temperatures. So, and think about like the socioeconomic position of the people. So a lot of people are not privileged to stay at home or work from home. A lot of people don't have internet connection, don't have laptops. And a lot of these people, they have to go out to work because they're the frontliners, they're the essential people in the businesses, right? So essentially, like advocating for the environment is difficult in the pandemic. So a lot of things have moved virtually. So in terms of like having online webinars, having posting infographics and stuff like that. But for someone who is already working from home or studying from home, you're in front of the computer 24/7. And to expect people to join webinars as well, it's kind of like throughout these 2 years, like a lot of people have noticed that they've been really stressed out from being online all the time, especially since you have to wake up, go to work or go to classes, and then alongside that your other interests or like club activities and volunteer work would also be online. So you would experience like what they call like Zoom fatigue, right? So you just want to close and go offline, like rest and actually go out, look at nature or something. But yeah, I think it's really difficult because a lot of people find that talking about the environment isn't necessary, or it isn't an important point to fight, especially during this pandemic. But I think that during this pandemic, it has also brought a lot of light to how important talking about the climate crisis is. So especially like going back to the indigenous people. So these people a lot of times don't have access to medical care. And if they were, they have contracted COVID because someone brought it into their communities, like they would have to travel a long distance just to go to the hospital to get tested, go home, wait for the test to come, results to come out, and then travel all the way to the hospital in case of a positive. And then everyone will need to, quarantine and stuff like that. And then it comes back to also like resource scarcity, like how are they going to fend for themselves? Like, as you know, like in a lot of countries where agriculture is one of the top economy, like Malaysia, because of the ban on interstate travel, a lot of farmers can't even sell their crops. So what ends up happening is food waste. And example, if a farmer is to sell corn and then all their corn cannot be sold, then what are they going to do with it? They have to like burn it or find some other ways to get rid of it. And then when they don't have income coming in, how are they supposed to feed their family? Buy protective gear like masks, buy sanitizers, medicine. And it all comes back down to the system that oppresses people who cannot fend for themselves, especially indigenous people and the poor. So I think it's really important that the pandemic has actually shed light on the importance of, having a governance that protects all people as well as the environment that we live on. So it's not just about, having the rights or to just go back to work, taking care of like the SOP and stuff like that. It's about how are we going to sustainably live, because the pandemic doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. And working from home isn't working for a lot of people. So we need professionals, we need people who are experienced and experts in actually planning out this recovery plan, which Malaysia says that we have it in plan, but it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere because we've been in lockdown for months, and yet the cases continue to rise to 20,000 a day. So it's really not working out for the majority of people here. And essentially fighting for the right policies to be implemented comes with also fighting for the climate crisis, because the recovery plan needs to come with long-term sustainable living. So it's not just about your income, but it's also about, the energy consumption. So we need essentially all areas to be covered in order for people to be protected and safe. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
You really raise a lot of many important points there. And again, everything really is interconnected, and we really have to try to understand how everything is interrelated, the things that we do to the environment. That's why we have to put more importance to protecting the environment. Now let's hear it from Joshua. Joshua, how has the pandemic affected your work and how you dealt with it?
Yes, pandemic has greatly affected our work. We have been fond of organizing education activities, especially for the youth. Pre-pandemic, we would be going from school to schools to communities, even in some cases chapels, parishes, churches, to talk about climate change and plastic pollution. But now we cannot do that, and we're forced to enter the four corners of our virtual screens and talk about the environment sometimes. Aside from that, it has also affected a lot of our work in policy lobbying, because most of the time we would always use public pressure in lobbying for environmental policies, or opposing environmentally destructive projects and programs. But now it has weakened us because of health protocols as well that we don't want to violate for our own safety. Our organization is practicing some self-care and community care initiatives. We're always keeping that in mind, that to take care for each other as we resist together in this crisis that we're facing right now. So we would sometimes hang out in Discord, just listen to music, and sometimes casual face-to-face meetings and sessions, Zoom calls where we will not talk about hard issues and hard steps and strategies, but we'll just hang out and listen to each other and just share what we want to share. So yeah, we believe that we're also in constant communication with the team about anything, even outside of environmental concerns, just to always feel that you have someone to talk to and someone to reach out to in these very difficult times of isolation.
Thank you, Joshua. Charan, maybe you would also like to share about the self-care practices.
Yeah, I must say that pandemic had pushed the environmental advocate become more difficult especially for everyone, and it's sometimes it's hard to stay motivated, as like many of you have said that we have to stay in front of the screen 24/7 all the time. Well, for my self-care, yeah, just like I have stated, like what my why to start, or like I am a plan person, so I started to plan a lot during the pandemic, as well as it become so boring and like run out of motivation. like plants has become like one of my inspiration to like see how it grows every day. And yeah, that's kind of like make your mental health stay like on place. But I would like to also speak about the advocates as well, that the pandemic has also like pushed the boundaries of our advocacy for the volunteer as well, that many of us has to like do advocate online instead of on ground, especially like in Facebook and social media and stuff, that we have to adapt ourselves to become like more on the like online oriented advocacy. I must say that, yeah, one way or another, I could see that there is some like opportunities in the pandemic as well. Yeah, and as well as during the pandemic, we need to also stay motivated and also empower and volunteer as well. As like volunteers, like important part to move the environmental issue forward. So in Greenpeace Thailand, we have a platform, online platform, that we could share our stories and also skills during the pandemic with other volunteers. I must say that this is such an empowering platform, and it makes our mental health become like better. Yeah.
Thank you, Chad. And Amika, would you like to share opportunities that the pandemic brought, or maybe even talk about your self-care tips?
Yes, actually, I think during the pandemic, there are two sides of it. So the bad side is the one that you guys know, we cannot go out and it's boring. But then another side that I think it's benefits me and it's positive, it's that actually I become like, I have learned about myself more, and staying with myself, just stay with my own self and thinking a lot, and practice my hobbies. Like actually before pandemic, I don't really have time to do my hobbies. So my hobby is singing and playing music, apart from the environmental activities, because at the time I was just like go out and be active with the environmental activities and stuff, and my hobby is just sometimes not really that much. Like I just this time I start to be serious about my hobbies and do other things and start learning new things, like things that I don't know before. And yeah, I've learned a lot during the pandemic, new things that I've never learned before, like online or doing it by myself at home, like cooking and stuff. But also during the pandemic, there are a lot of opportunities as well, if it's but online, though it's not really on site. But I can, as you just get up and just open your computer and join the online meeting, online activities directly, and you can join as many as you want. You don't have to take your time to go there and like before pandemic, you just have to at least have to have like one or two activities only do before the pandemic, because you have to travel and stuff. But now you can just stay there and do it as many as you want, because I like to get myself busy. So yeah, I think that's two sides for the pandemic. Yes.
Thank you, Amika. If we have time, I'd ask you to sing, but let's save that for another time. And we now come to the Q&A. So if any one of you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand, or you can simply put your question on the chat box and we'll try to respond to them. And thank you for for trying to interact with us through the chat box. I see a lot of comments here agreeing with everything that's been said. Thank you so much. And yeah, do we have anyone who would like to ask a question to our speakers? Okay, so I see a lot of comments here. I guess suddenly the people are shy to ask questions, or they're still trying to reflect on the things that has been said so far. No questions? Everything's been clear, yeah? All right, so if you have any questions, just feel free to post them on the chat box. But I guess we're also, oh, there you go. Most effective strategy. Okay, so we have a question from Rochelle. What is the most effective strategy that helped in your work? Would anyone want to answer that?
Hello.
Go ahead, Chad.
Is it the word for the advocacy, right?
Yeah.
Well, I must say that I don't have the most effective strategy, but right now, as I have said, that the pandemic has pushed the boundaries how we could advocate online. Well, so I see opportunities online as well, that there are many platforms and like social networks ways such as Clubhouse. I found that, do you know Clubhouse? I don't know if everyone knows Clubhouse, but actually I think Clubhouse is very interesting platform and application where you can do such our talk today, that you can share everything online there, that people will come and start listening and share their idea. I think that talking to each other, especially for those who are interested in environmental issue, you will have come to some kind of new ideas and new way to cope with the situation right now, especially where right now in Thailand, the political involvement is higher than ever. So everyone will try to share their idea and how to cope with, especially the authoritarian government.
Thank you,
I would
Chaden.
like to add from Zalan's point about social media. So I also think that social media is the key to get people more involved in the environmental activities, especially youth, because we grow up with them. And I think if it's viral, if we make something viral, people will be interested in it and join it and participating in that activity. So we should focus more on content creating. And for example, like in Thailand, right, we have like a YouTuber. I don't know if you know, but there's a YouTuber in Thailand. His name is Wanna Singh, and he's like passionate about environmental issues, and he created the YouTube videos about environmental issues, and it's go viral, and everyone just follow him and subscribe him, and also want to know more about the environmental issues. So they are aware, and they kind of like take action more. And also the activities, which is fun activity and hands-on activity and easy activity during the pandemic, it's also helps. If you combine the environmental activities with other interesting skill like art, or I don't know, art like drawing, music, and it's interesting for them to learn, for new people who are not really interested in the environmental issues. Yeah.
Thank you, Amika. There's a question from Rafael about activism. About sometimes it can be, Joshua, you mentioned about red tagging, right? And it can be dangerous. So he's asking if it's okay to involve children in activism. Joshua?
Thank you. That's very, I think that's a difficult question to answer if young people should engage in activism. But I think there's always a lot of factors that we need to consider about it. First, the first concern would be about safety. That's the primary concern because it's better to be. There's a saying here in the Philippines that it's better to be a hero that is alive than is a hero that is dead because environmental activists is always very vulnerable to summary execution. So it's always very important to consider that. And I really suggest that for budding activists, you seek mentors that will help you and will guide you of experience in activism, in dealing with the security sector, with governments, engaging governments. So, but it is also very important. We should not be disheartened about that because it's very important that we go to the front lines and really take up the space and raise our voice for the issues that we want to be addressed, especially the issue about our planet. In fact, we should not only be on the streets, but we should be part of conferences halls. We should be part of in the rooms where decisions about our future are being made. It should not be only about taking it to the streets, but they should also value our participation and our passion to be part of discussion about the environment and also about our future. So, would it be okay for children to join to pursue activism? My answer is yes. Just make sure that you are safe and um, always know when to poke the bear and always know when to maybe um, baby the bear, so that it will not be very dangerous. So I started my activism when I was 16, so I'm still a child under maybe UN definition or Philippine law definition. I'm still a child, but yes, there is a need for us to go to the front lines, raise our voice, raise our concerns, and get them addressed. So we need your passion, everyone, and express your activism in very different ways. Activism is not only showing up in the streets and holding a megaphone and shouting your demand, but it can also be in various artistic ways. It can be through art, it can be through social media. There's so many ways to express our activism and to express our demands and to express our resistance.
Thank you. We have a lot of questions coming in, but unfortunately we are down to our final question. So a question from Isel: do you think the pandemic strengthened our solidarity? And how do you envision the future of emerging awareness and movements, particularly youth movements? Maybe Haley and Quina?
Yeah, I can take this one. So I think it did strengthen our solidarity, especially because like the pandemic actually brought light a lot of injustice in the world. So not just like particular like South countries, but like all over the world, we see that how systemic oppression actually impacts people, especially in a time of crisis like the pandemic. So yeah, and throughout this pandemic, you can see that a lot of different areas of people have been speaking out about the oppression they face. Firstly, like the healthcare frontliners, as well as the indigenous people. And a lot of people are beginning to see the links and intersectionality between all these communities and the things that they have in common, which is, systemic oppression. So I think it really did strengthen our solidarity because everyone is starting to understand that it's not just how one thing affects one community, but how one thing can affect one community, which affects another community, and it's like a trickle-down effect, So everyone is affected in a way because the pandemic has shown that the systemic oppression of our government and the governance has, continuously been using and exploiting us. And in a time of crisis, they're not here to protect us. So essentially, I think that's one of the biggest things that the pandemic has, brought to light, is that everyone is being exploited essentially by the government. Because you think about how you work a 9-to-5 job and then all of a sudden you have to work online. But the thing is, being able to work online is a privilege. Not everyone is able to. So like the example I gave just now, a farmer is not able to sell his crops online. And even if there is, possibility of a delivery service, who is going to cover the cost? So things like this, where the government is supposed to ensure that, recovery plans take consideration of all aspects of people and their different jobs. I think it's so important, especially when you put a policy such as working from home. You have to understand that, every single job matters and every person's income matter, because it's not just about feeding yourself, but your family, taking care of your loans, making sure you have a house to live in, and electricity. Essentially, if you want to work from home, you need Wi-Fi, right? So how I envision the future of emerging awareness and movements, I think that how I envision it is more people would come together. So not just me as a climate activist fighting for the climate, but actually looking at other aspects of how things are interconnected, like, the political situation in my country, the governance, and being able to fight for that. For example, like a recent protest in Malaysia that happened, the Lawan protest against the Perikatan National Government. All sorts of activists came down to the streets to protest, because it's not just about the climate, or it's not just about a specific community. It's about how everyone is being affected by the leaders of our country. So it's so important that the pandemic actually showed us that it's important for us to work together. Essentially, it's not just me fighting for the climate and you fighting for the people, but all of us have to work together to create solutions that help every aspect of the people and as well as the environment. So yeah.
Thank you, Haley. We're coming to the end of this very fruitful dialogue, and we should end on a positive note. So I'll be asking all of our guest speakers to give your final thoughts and your message of hope to everyone who's in this room. And you may also try to plug some events that you may have, and maybe even share your social media handles. Let's start with Queena.
Sure. I'm really delighted to hear all of the stories in here, and it really emphasizes a couple of notes on future hopes. One of the key takeaway from this pandemic that everyone seems to share or feel the same way is the importance of innovation. And we are totally hopeful that the future generation, especially the generation that have relearned life through the lens of pandemic, is really higher in innovation skill, and that is really necessary for future activism work. And the second one is really the shift of mindset, especially between activists, that the pandemic really shows us that the people do a lot of things. They innovate, they cope, and our role is really to convene and facilitate those intersectionality and enable people to really supporting each other in their solidarity work. And we'll see, let them surprise us from there.
Thank you, Queena. Sharon.
So seeing a lot of young people joining the conversation is really empowering. I must say that the pandemic and the new generation obviously will have like a lot of skills and a lot of creatives, also to advocate for the environmental. I must say that I am hopeful that everyone is empowered today and continue to advocate more and in a innovative and creative way.
Thank you, Sharon. Amika?
Yes, for my last message, I missed some note here. Okay, so as I see, everyone here, most of them are young people, and like I'm happy to see that. And I think I want to say that youth are really powerful, okay, and do not give up on fighting for your cause, especially this cause, the environmental one, and the earth and our next generation, and everyone need you guys to survive. And also, we are like young plants which will grow and give more seeds to the world, and the new seeds are the new people that stand up because of your actions, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Amika. Joshua.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to join this conversation today. We're always asked, young environmental and climate activists are always asked, what keeps us hopeful in this very depressing moments of the climate crisis. My response would be, there's no other choice but to be hopeful, because if we lose our hope, there would be no reason for us to fight. If we'll just accept what is given to us, then we will not be able to assert what is due to us. So it is very important. Hope is that something that can be a very little seed that you hold, that will keep you, that will sustain you in your fight for environmental and climate action. So it is very, very important that all of us have that, and that seed will stay alive if you always go back to your why. So it's very important for us to realize our whys, and to hold on to that a little seed of hope that we have in us. The very reason, I mean, the very presence of all of us today here shows our hope for a better future. It shows that we're willing to come together for a collective global action to urge governments and corporations to take radical and immediate steps to address the climate crisis. So it's very important that we hold on to that hope, and even though it has been a cliche, but the youth always holds a huge power. It is just a matter of activating it and using it correctly. So I'm very happy to join you guys today, and I hope that all of us here are safe and will continue defending the right of the environment and defend the right of our people. Thank you so much, and solidarity from the Philippines.
Thank you, Joshua. And last but not the least, Haley.
Yeah, I completely agree with Joshua. So essentially, we really don't have a choice anymore at this point. We need every single person fighting for the climate, because essentially all of us will be greatly affected by it. So my last thought would be that I think that everyone should really understand what activism is and really start practicing it in your everyday life. So it's not just going on the streets is activism. You participating in this talk today and sharing what you learn is activism. You posting about it on your social media is activism. So that's essentially what we need to do. We need to keep spreading information, teaching people, educating others, and getting them to come together to join and help everyone. So yeah, I think it's really important for us to keep learning and keep engaging with others, especially with other communities that perhaps that not so engaging or understanding about the climate crisis, but help them find a link, help them understand how it relates to them. And yeah, just keep speaking up and keep using your voice, and don't be afraid to speak up.
Thank you, Haley. How about a round of virtual applause for our lovely, amazing speakers, Amika, Chaden, Haley, Joshua, and Queena. Thank you so much. Please give your like reacts and your heart reacts as well. Thank you. Terima kasih, salamat, kapkun makap. Thank you very much. And before we end this session, we'd love to hear your key takeaways for today. We've launched a Mentimeter here in Zoom. You'll see a small pop-up window on your screen, so just click View. If you don't have a Menti app installed, click Add, then Authorize. Go back to the Zoom meeting, then click Open to vote inside the Zoom. If you're having problems, go to menti.com and use the code 8566-6250. Yes, so thank you once again for everyone, and thank you for joining us, showing up in this Zoom Zoom call, in this Zoom dialogue. Thank you very much. So again, please go to menti.com and use the code 8566-6250 for your thoughts, for your reflections about our event. Unfortunately, this is the end of our learning session. So on behalf of Greenpeace and the Asia Solidarity Lab, we would like to thank everyone for joining our conversation today. Again, special thanks to our speakers, Amika, Charan, Haley, Joshua, and Queena. We hope to see you in our next activities. And for everyone who wants to be a part of the climate justice campaign or Greenpeace, please like and follow Greenpeace Philippines on Facebook, Twitter, IG, and TikTok, even TikTok, yes. So before we officially end, we would like to request our participants to please turn your videos on so we can take a group photo. Group photo, everyone. Try to fix your hair. Looking good. All right, so I suppose someone's taking a photo. All right, look at the camera and 1, 2, 3, smile. All right, one more. 1, 2, 3, smile. The next one. 1, 2, 3, smile. And the last one. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, so we got that, I suppose. Yes. All right. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much again. Keep safe, keep healthy, stay green for the environment.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
See you around.
Thank you, Ryan, Amika, Kina, Joshua, Sharon. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Tina.
arranging the session. So fun.
Yes.
So fun.
So amazing. We
And
had
very active. The participants are very active. I really love it.
100
Yes.
strong participants.
Yeah, I'm surprised like there are many young people.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Like a lot.
Yeah, and very,
Me
very
too.
young.
Super young.
Yeah.
like I think they're elementary school young. So
Mm.
that's really
Yeah, we start them young.
Is it a part of the program that kind of like you're engaging with schools?
I think so, yeah. I
The
think that's also
primary-
the purpose of Asia Solidarity Lab, to like involve the younger people. So yeah. Thank you so much, guys. You were really great. A lot of insightful answers and insightful comments. I was blown away. Thank you very much. And it was lovely seeing you all. It was lovely being your host. Miss BG, I already have the accent now. The British accent.
Bongga ng accent ni Ryan.
Fix the hair.
Yeah.
Josh,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Amika,
Thank
Margarita.
you.
Thank you. Let's
Thank
keep
you
it
so
up.
much, everyone. Take care. Don't forget to stretch.
Yeah, this is not the last time that we will be getting in touch. Let's do more of this in the future, right, Tina?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry,
this is
can
nice.
Can we do one last group photo?
Yeah, unfortunately,
Sure.
Haley, I think, already left.
We love photo. We can take 100.
Okay, 1, 2. Who's taking the photo, by the way? Tina. Okay.
I'm taking
1, 1, 2, 3.
Ready? All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
So
everyone.
much.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
Enjoy the rest of
day.
the day.
Good day.
Take
Goodbye.
care.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Take
Bye.
care.
Madam Angelikish, thank you.
Yay!
Proceed
Good
po.
job. Good job, teens. Ang galing.
Congrats po.
Uy, ang
Team
galing. Ang dami natin.
Grace po,
Oo,
grabe.
ang
Uy,
galing.
Joshua, ang galing. Sobrang
Uy,
galing. Like,
Joshua,
Ano po,
Joshua,
Ate PG,
sumali
yes.
ka sa Climate Justice Advisory Group. Okay?
Yes, sige,
Yes.
very excited.
Okay, sige.
Baka may bago din pala kami na ilo-launch sa Negros kasi yung coal na natalo natin, papalitan ni Ramon ang ng fossil gas. So,
oh my God.
yun yung
Oo
bagong
nga.
development.
My God. Sige.
Po, para
Oo. Sige. Let us know kung paano mag-collaborate. Tapos, Tina, sasali yan sa mentor si Joshua. Kukurutin ko yan.
Siyempre kapag sinang VJ, hindi na ako pwede humindi.
Okay. Padalhan ka na lang ni Tina kung paano ka maka-join, ha?
Sige po. Thank you so much. Maraming
Thank
salamat.
you.
Congrats.
Thank you. Congrats,
Thank you.
Tina. Galing. See you later. See you
Yes,
later.
see you
Sobrang
later.
dami natin. Madam Tina, alam mo na ba kung ilan ang participants ng iba?
Siyempre, kinikis ko na.
I think very good move na nag-Zoom pero naka-record pa pala tayo.
Ay, sorry.
Okay.
Cut mo na lang.